Jurassic Park wasn't just a dinosaur movie. It was a prehistoric circus of chaos, where robots sweated in the rain, storm winds ripped sets apart, and one sound designer spent weeks recording mating tortoises just to make raptors sound scary. Behind the roar and the spectacle, this movie nearly collapsed under its own weight, and somehow, that only made it more legendary. Released in 1993, Jurassic Park didn't just redefine the summer blockbuster, it rewired Hollywood itself. For the first time, audiences saw CGI creatures share the screen with full-size animatronic beasts, and the illusion was so perfect that paleontology classrooms filled up overnight. This was Spielberg at the peak of his power, blending science with spectacle and making dinosaurs feel real again. But here's the thing, the movie you saw on screen was just the polished version of a production held together by sweat, storms, and sheer luck. From casting almost-wares like Harrison Ford and Jim Carrey, to a hurricane that literally blew a character's death off the script, the story of how Jurassic Park got made is just as wild as the movie itself. So hold on to your butts. These are 23 weird facts about Jurassic Park. Number 1. The T-Rex wasn't just acting when it attacked that car. It was malfunctioning. Stan Winston's massive animatronic wasn't waterproofed, and when the Hawaiian rain soaked into 9,000 pounds of latex foam, the robot started moving on its own. The hydraulics went haywire, the head began shuddering uncontrollably, and suddenly, the T-Rex was lunging at actors who weren't expecting it. Between every single take, a crew of technicians had to rush in with towels and industrial hairdryers, literally drying the dinosaur like a giant wet dog. One crew member said it was like giving a bath to a monster that wanted to kill you. But when that malfunctioning head crashed through the plexiglass roof, Spielberg didn't yell cut. He kept rolling because sometimes the best scares come from real terror. Number 2. Before there were dinosaurs, there was just one pterodactyl and a very different story. Michael Crichton's first concept wasn't Jurassic Park at all. He wanted to write about a single pterodactyl being cloned and brought back to life, told from the perspective of a small child. His team of reviewers hated it. So he tried again, this time with a college student accidentally creating a dinosaur. They hated that too. It wasn't until his third attempt that Crichton looked back at his own 1973 film, Westworld, a theme park where everything goes disastrously wrong, and thought, what if instead of robot cowboys, it was real dinosaurs? That spark of inspiration, that connection between two stories separated by 20 years, became the foundation for one of the biggest franchises in movie history. Number 3. Steven Spielberg bought a movie that didn't exist. In May 1990, he convinced Universal to acquire the film rights to Jurassic Park before Michael Crichton's book had even been published. Spielberg was so excited by the concept that he started storyboarding scenes from the novel despite there being no screenplay written yet. He was sketching dinosaur attacks, drawing camera angles, and planning shots for a story that readers hadn't even seen. The book wouldn't hit shelves for months, but Spielberg was already living in that world, already seeing those creatures move. He'd fallen in love with an idea, and that obsession would drive every decision that followed. Number 4. The sick Triceratops nearly electrocuted its puppeteers. When Spielberg insisted the massive creature be filmed on location in Hawaii, Stan Winston's team dug a hole beneath it so operators could control the animatronic from underground using cables and hydraulics. But they dug too deep and hit a water line. As the Hawaiian rain poured down, the puppeteers found themselves lying in an increasingly flooded pit, operating electrical controls while water seeped in around them. Sparks started flying, literally. The crew was getting shocked through the wet cables while trying to make the dinosaur breathe convincingly. One puppeteer later said, "We were more worried about dying than the actors were about being eaten." Number 5. Phil Tippett thought he was making the movie of his career. His stop-motion animation studio had been hired to create all the dinosaurs for Jurassic Park, frame by frame, using the same techniques that brought King Kong to life. Tippett's team spent months building detailed miniature dinosaurs, perfecting their movements, planning every shot. They were going to animate stop-motion creatures on blue-screen stages, then composite them digitally into live-action footage. It was going to be groundbreaking. Then Dennis Muren and his team at Industrial Light and Magic showed up with a secret. they'd been working on full CGI dinosaurs in their spare time. And when they presented Spielberg with a test of computer-generated Gallimimus skeletons running through a field, everything changed. Tippett watched his life's work become obsolete in a single meeting. But instead of walking away, he became the dinosaur supervisor, helping teach computers how his creatures should move. Sometimes evolution means adapting or dying, and Tippett chose to evolve. Number 6, only 15 minutes. That's all the dinosaur screen time in a 127-minute movie that's famous for dinosaurs. But here's the kicker. Of those 15 minutes, only 6 were actually computer-generated. The rest? Stan Winston's animatronics, puppets, and practical magic. Audiences left theaters convinced they'd watched 2 hours of digital dinosaurs, but most of what they saw was foam, latex, and remote-controlled jaws. The T-Rex that terrorized those kids was a real machine. The raptors stalking through the kitchen were physical puppets. Even the towering Brachiosaurus was a massive animatronic head on a crane. Spielberg pulled off the greatest magic trick in cinema history. He made people believe the future had arrived when most of the movie was built the old-fashioned way. Sometimes the best illusion isn't showing people what's not there. It's making them forget what is. Number 7. Hurricane Iniki didn't just hit Hawaii. It hit Jurassic Park with the force of extinction itself. The most powerful hurricane ever to strike the islands arrived just as filming was wrapping, packing 145 mph winds that turned million-dollar sets into expensive kindling. The pathway to the maintenance shed destroyed. The visitor center gutted. Entire scenes had to be cut because the locations literally didn't exist anymore. Cast and crew huddled in a hotel ballroom while the storm devoured their movie outside. But not Richard Attenborough. The 69-year-old actor stayed in his bed, calmly sleeping through nature's tantrum. When Spielberg asked how he could possibly rest during a Category 4 hurricane, Attenborough smiled and said, "My dear boy, I survived the Blitz." Some crew members were brave enough to film the destruction, and pieces of that real chaos made it into the final cut. Mother Nature almost killed Jurassic Park, but she also gave it some of its most authentic terror. Number 8. Sean Connery said no to $15 million in immortality. The role of John Hammond was offered to the man who'd been James Bond, and Connery turned it down to make Rising Sun instead. A forgettable thriller that barely registered at the box office, while Jurassic Park became the highest-grossing film of all time. It was another entry in Connery's legendary catalog of missed opportunities, joining Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, The Matrix, and The Lord of the Rings. Instead, the part went to Richard Attenborough, who brought grandfatherly warmth to a character who was supposed to be more sinister. Connery would have played Hammond as darker, more calculating, but Attenborough made him tragic, a dreamer whose good intentions paved the road to disaster. Sometimes the actor who says no changes the movie more than the one who says yes. Number 9. The T-Rex roar that shook theaters worldwide wasn't a roar at all. It was 5 different animals having the worst day of their lives, all at once. Sound designer Gary Rydstrom spent months hunting for the perfect prehistoric scream, recording everything from zoo animals to farm creatures. The final T-Rex voice was a mashup of a dog's bark, a penguin's call, a tiger's snarl, an alligator's bellow, and the squeal of a baby elephant. But that wasn't the weirdest part. The Dilophosaurus, the one that kills Dennis Nedry, used howler monkeys, hawk screeches, rattlesnake hisses, and swan calls. And the velociraptors? Their terrifying communications came from mating tortoises. Rydstrom won 2 Academy Awards for creating sounds that had never existed, building voices for creatures that had been silent for 65 million years. He gave dinosaurs their voice back, one barnyard animal at a time. Number 10. Jeff Goldblum's entire wardrobe was a philosophical statement stolen from Albert Einstein. In Michael Crichton's novel, Ian Malcolm explains to Ellie Sattler that he only wears black and gray because he never wants to waste time deciding what to wear in the morning. It's the exact same reasoning Einstein used for his identical daily outfits. But here's the strange connection. Goldblum had already played this character before. In David Cronenberg's The Fly, his character Seth Brundle gives the same explanation for wearing the same clothes every day. 2 different movies, 2 different characters, same neurotic efficiency. Spielberg dressed Malcolm like a walking omen, all in black, while Hammond wore pure white. Good versus evil, optimism versus pessimism, all spelled out in a color palette. Malcolm wasn't just a mathematician warning about chaos theory. He was chaos theory, dressed like death and speaking uncomfortable truths about the future. Number 11. Wayne Knight was spotted in the worst possible place. Steven Spielberg was watching Paul Verhoeven's erotic thriller Basic Instinct in 1992 when a particular actor caught his eye. Not Michael Douglas, not Sharon Stone. Wayne Knight, playing a sleazy police detective in what was essentially a glorified cameo. Spielberg sat through the entire film, waited for the credits to roll, and wrote down Knight's name. That's how Dennis Nedry was born. Not through auditions or screen tests, but because Spielberg saw something perfectly untrustworthy in Knight's face during a movie about murder and obsession. The irony is delicious. Knight went from playing a cop trying to solve a crime to playing the man who commits the ultimate corporate betrayal. But here's the twist that almost happened. Charlie Sheen was also considered for Nedry. Imagine that chaos. Instead of Newman from Seinfeld sabotaging the park, it could have been Charlie Sheen with a bag of cocaine and a can of Barbasol. Number 12. Harrison Ford almost traded Indiana Jones for dinosaurs. Before Sam Neill ever held a fossil, the role of Dr. Alan Grant was offered to Hollywood's biggest adventure star. Ford passed. So did Kevin Costner, fresh off Dances with Wolves. Dennis Quaid said no. Mel Gibson wasn't interested. Richard Dreyfuss, William Hurt, Kurt Russell, and even Robin Williams all took meetings and walked away. The studio was running out of A-listers when they found Neil, a relatively unknown New Zealand actor who brought quiet authority to a role that could have been just another action hero. Neil didn't have Ford's swagger or Gibson's intensity, but he had something better. He felt like a real scientist, not a movie star playing dress-up. Sometimes the perfect casting isn't about getting the biggest name. It's about finding the person who disappears completely into the character. Number 13. The ending you saw wasn't the ending Spielberg wrote. In the original script, there was no T-Rex rescue, no dramatic arrival to save the day from the velociraptors. Instead, Grant was supposed to use the T-Rex skeleton in the visitor center lobby, rigging it with pulleys and cables to crush the raptors with fossilized bones. Death by dinosaur history lesson. But during editing, Spielberg realized something was missing. The audience wanted to see the T-Rex one more time, alive and fighting, not just hanging from wires as museum decoration. So he rewrote the climax, bringing the Queen back for her final roar. The skeleton gathering dust was replaced by 9,000 pounds of hydraulic fury. Sometimes the best endings aren't planned. They're demanded by the story itself. Number 14. Jurassic Park accidentally saved paleontology. When the film opened in 1993, something unexpected happened in college classrooms across America. Enrollment in paleontology programs skyrocketed. Universities that had been quietly closing dinosaur studies suddenly found themselves flooded with applications. Leading paleontologist Steve Brusatte later said, "Jurassic Park is one of the best things to ever happen to paleontology." An entire generation of kids walked out of theaters wanting to dig up real dinosaurs, not just watch fake ones. The film sparked the largest surge in paleontology students in recorded history, creating a wave of scientists who are still making discoveries today. Michael Crichton and Steven Spielberg didn't just resurrect dinosaurs for entertainment. They accidentally resurrected an entire scientific field that was slowly going. Number 15. Steven Spielberg was making two masterpieces at once, and it nearly broke him. While Jurassic Park was in post-production, Spielberg was already deep into filming Schindler's List. By day, he directed one of cinema's most important Holocaust dramas. By night, he edited scenes of dinosaurs eating lawyers. The emotional whiplash was brutal. He'd spend 12 hours filming the horrors of human genocide, then rush to a cutting room to fine-tune CGI creatures and John Williams's soaring themes. Spielberg later called it the hardest time of my filmmaking life. The schedule was so impossible that he handed some post-production duties to George Lucas, who owned Industrial Light and Magic. Lucas received a special thanks credit, but the real thanks should go to Spielberg for somehow surviving the most schizophrenic year in movie history. 2 films, 2 worlds, One director who refused to choose between them. Number 16. The velociraptors were the wrong dinosaurs entirely. What Spielberg called velociraptors were actually Deinonychus, a much larger and more terrifying cousin. Real velociraptors were the size of turkeys, weighed less than 50 pounds, and were covered in feathers like deadly chickens. But Michael Crichton had used Gregory Paul's book, Predatory Dinosaurs of the World, as reference, which classified Deinonychus as a subspecies of velociraptor. So technically, they weren't lying. They were just using outdated science to justify movie monsters. But here's where fate stepped in. During production, paleontologists discovered a new species called Utahraptor that was almost exactly the size of Spielberg's movie raptors. The universe had retroactively justified the creative license. The wrong dinosaur became the right dinosaur because science caught up to Hollywood's imagination. Sometimes being wrong at the right time makes you accidentally correct. Number 17. Ariana Richards went from acting to actual dinosaur hunting. After playing Lex, the computer-savvy granddaughter who saves everyone by knowing Unix systems, Richards developed a real passion for paleontology. The following summer, she joined Jack Horner, the paleontologist who inspired Dr. Grant's character, on an actual dinosaur dig in Montana. She traded Hollywood sets for Badlands excavation sites, swapping movie magic for real discovery. Richards later said the film opened her eyes to how much we still don't know about prehistoric life. She never became a full-time paleontologist, but she spent years contributing to real digs, proving that sometimes fictional dinosaurs can create real scientists. The kid who rebooted the park's computer system ended up helping uncover actual ancient mysteries buried in stone. Number 18. There's a movie playing inside the movie, and it's Steven Spielberg trolling himself. During Dennis Nedry's famous "Ah ha ha ha, you didn't say the magic words" scene, eagle-eyed viewers can spot a small video window on one of his computer screens. It's playing Jaws, Spielberg's own 1975 shark thriller that made him famous and probably gave him a few ideas about audience terrorizing monsters. It's the perfect inside joke. The man who made people afraid of the ocean was now making them afraid of theme parks, and he couldn't resist slipping his greatest hit into his newest nightmare. Nedry's computer crashes while Jaws swims in the background, a reminder that Spielberg had been scaring audiences long before dinosaurs walked the earth again. Some directors cameo in their films. Spielberg let his shark do it for him. Number 19. The film made Steven Spielberg richer than any director in history. His deal with Universal gave him a percentage of the profits, and when Jurassic Park became the highest-grossing film of all time, those percentages turned into a fortune. Spielberg earned approximately $250 million from Jurassic Park alone, still the largest amount any individual has ever made from a single movie. But here's what makes it even more impressive. He earned that money while simultaneously directing Schindler's List, a film he knew would make no money but felt compelled to create. Spielberg used his dinosaur millions to fund passion projects, support Holocaust education, and establish his foundation. The monsters that terrorized audiences became the financial foundation for some of cinema's most important work. Sometimes the biggest blockbuster paydays fund the smallest, most personal films. Number 20. Jurassic Park swept the Oscars in the only categories that mattered. The film was nominated for 3 Academy Awards: Best Sound Effects Editing, Best Sound, and Best Visual Effects. It won all 3. A clean sweep that recognized the technical revolution happening behind the scenes. But there's beautiful irony buried in those wins. Richard Attenborough, who played John Hammond, had beaten Spielberg for Best Director at the 1983 Oscars. His film Gandhi had triumphed over Spielberg's E.T. the Extraterrestrial for Best Picture. Now, a decade later, Spielberg was directing the man who had beaten him, and this time Spielberg's movie was taking home the gold. It wasn't revenge exactly, but it was poetic justice. The student had become the master, and the master had become the grandfather feeding dinosaurs in the rain, while technical wizardry earned the recognition it deserved. Number 21. George Lucas saved Jurassic Park while Spielberg was saving lives. The post-production schedule was so brutal that Spielberg couldn't be in 2 places at once. He was shooting Schindler's List during the day and editing Dinosaurs at night. But even that wasn't enough time. So he made a desperate call to his old friend George Lucas, who owned Industrial Light and Magic. Lucas quietly stepped in, overseeing some of the visual effects work and post-production duties that Spielberg simply couldn't handle. It was an unprecedented move, one legendary director helping another finish a masterpiece, while that director was simultaneously creating a different masterpiece. Lucas received a special thanks credit in the final film, but it should have been bigger. Without him, Jurassic Park might never have made its release date. Sometimes friendship means finishing someone else's revolution while they're busy changing the world. Number 22. Jim Carrey almost brought his rubber-faced chaos to Isla Nublar. Before Jeff Goldblum ever said life finds a way, the role of Ian Malcolm was offered to the king of physical comedy himself. Carrey was rising fast in 1992, and the studio thought his manic energy could bring something unpredictable to the mathematician warning about chaos theory. But something didn't click. Maybe it was the dark subject matter. Maybe it was the ensemble nature of the cast. Or maybe Carrey realized that Malcolm needed to be more than just comic relief. The role went to Goldblum instead, who brought his own brand of neurotic brilliance to the part. Carrey would find his blockbuster success elsewhere. But imagine how different those chaos theory speeches would have been delivered with Ace Ventura's facial expressions. Sometimes the casting that doesn't happen shapes a movie as much as the casting that does. Number 23. Michael Crichton killed Ian Malcolm in his novel, then had to bring him back from the dead for the sequel. In the original Jurassic Park book, Malcolm dies from his injuries after the T-Rex attack. Case closed, character finished, no more chaos theory. But when the movie became a phenomenon and Universal demanded a sequel, there was one problem. Jeff Goldblum's Malcolm had become a fan favorite, and audiences wanted him back. So Crichton had to perform literary resurrection, writing the Lost World novel and awkwardly explaining that Malcolm hadn't actually died, just been very badly injured and reported dead by mistake. It was clumsy, but it was necessary. The sequel needed its mathematician, even if it meant retconning death itself. Crichton later admitted it was one of the strangest writing challenges of his career. How do you bring back a character you definitively killed? Very carefully and with a lot of creative explaining. But the weirdest twist came after the cameras stopped rolling. The film became so successful that Universal built real Jurassic Park attractions. But they had one problem nobody anticipated. The rides were too scary for kids. The same children who begged their parents to see the movie were terrified of the theme park versions. Universal had to tone down the animatronics, soften the dinosaur roars, and add warning signs everywhere because Spielberg's movie monsters were too realistic for real life. The irony was perfect. A film about a theme park where everything goes wrong inspired a real theme park where everything had to be made safer. Sometimes fiction is scarier than reality, even when reality is trying its hardest to be terrifying. Jurassic Park wasn't just a movie. It was controlled chaos that somehow worked. Behind every groundbreaking effect was a malfunctioning robot. Behind every iconic roar was a confused penguin. Behind every perfect shot was a director juggling two masterpieces while hurricanes destroyed his sets. It gave us revolution disguised as entertainment, turned extinct creatures into living nightmares, and proved that sometimes the best magic happens when everything goes wrong. From stop-motion suicide to mechanical T-Rex therapy sessions, it was 127 minutes of beautiful disaster that changed cinema forever. If these weird facts made you see those dinosaurs in a whole new way, drop a comment and tell us which behind-the-scenes story shocked you the most. Was it the T-Rex getting dried with hair dryers? Or Spielberg literally making two movies at once? Hit that subscribe button for more weird movie facts you never knew. Because when it comes to Hollywood chaos, life always finds a way to get stranger than fiction. And if you're craving more time-traveling chaos from the 80s, our video on Back to the Future will blow your mind. You'll discover why Michael J. Fox almost wasn't Marty McFly, and the insane stunts that nearly killed the DeLorean before it could travel through time.